Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. Good afternoon to you, Mark. Are you surprised to hear Benjamin, Mr. Lefty, talking about sacking the workers out on strike and bringing in private contractors?
Always a delight to agree with Benjamin, Julia, on these sort of economic policies. I do agree with him. I mean, we've got ourselves into a colossal problem in Birmingham. The Unite Union are saying it could spread elsewhere. I would have thought if you're a local council of whatever partisan persuasion, you might very well be thinking that if you're signing a deal to get refuse collected in your neck of the woods, you want a no strike agreement to be part of the deal, or at least a minimal strike agreement. I don't know, you can strike 1 day in 7 or some such like, but an all-out strike, signing a contract that allows that, well, look what it's brought us to, complete disaster. So I would have thought the way out of this is something along the lines that Benjamin has suggested. But over the long term, I think we've got to make sure that workers, especially if we're talking about a dozen or a few dozen jobs, not even at stake, pay rises for those jobs at stake, well, let's in future strike deals which do not allow this sort of all-out strike action.
And that's the thing. And again, it's kind of similar again to transport workers, you know, and who are able to go on strike and hold governments to ransom. And then, of course, Labour just come in and go, here, you have a nice big pay rise. And then, of course, you've got police and soldiers who are not allowed to strike for a reason, because we need it. If you work in a critical job at essential personnel, as Al Murray, the pub landlord, calls them, then actually there is an impact on the people that is far greater. What do you make of this is what we were told by a Tory councillor in Birmingham City Council. He said he verified it this morning that 2 local Tory-run councils nearby had said, we can send our refuse trucks in, we can come and help you. They haven't even had a response from Labour-run Birmingham City Council.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, you start to question in whose interests is Birmingham City Council being run. It doesn't look like it's being run in the interests of Birmingham ratepayers. They're dealing with, what is it now, more than 20,000 tonnes of rubbish across
I think it's more than that. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So I'm afraid they're giving the impression that the council's being run in the interest of the Unite Union rather than the interest of ratepayers. I mean, I'm amazed it's taken this long. You would have thought that Birmingham City Council would have leapt into action rather earlier to find support from neighbouring municipalities, or to find some private refuse collection company that could at least mitigate the damage. I mean, obviously negotiations can be ongoing, but they've got an obligation to try and get this litter off the streets. It's a major task, but it's not that.
Birmingham is looking properly third world at the moment. I don't know how
fourth world, worse than third world.
Well, indeed, and the biggest worry, of course, that this could spread elsewhere, because a lot of the issues that Birmingham City Council have been wrestling with financially are also issues that affect other councils as well. Let's talk about something completely different. Let's talk about Sunderland and that steel plant that has been taken into basically not nationalised as such, but certainly public control, if not ownership, at the current time. It's now emerged that Labour had backed Chinese investment in critical UK infrastructure, as indeed the Tories have done. I mean, certainly Cameron and Osborne. I mean, literally, like, let Chinese come in, buy everything. Huawei, be involved with Huawei. And then Chinese involvement in critical infrastructure, like our water firms, like nuclear power stations, you name it, they've been involved. But it's interesting, the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, and she's encouraged Chinese involvement in key parts of UK's critical infrastructure less than a month before the government wrested control of British Steel from its Beijing shareholders, amid lots of concern that they were deliberately running down the plant, partly so that because obviously we know every Chinese firm is beholden to the Chinese government. That is the law of the Chinese land. That actually they wanted to basically, Britain won't be able to make virgin steel anymore. We will actually basically have to rely on China. What do you make of this? So many politicians of pretty much every political hue happy to quite literally kowtow to the Chinese.
Yeah, we've got the West has got to completely reset its relationship with China. We want some form of trading relationship, obviously. I'm not suggesting we should have a blockade on all Chinese goods and services, but we've not drawn a very clear line about what's within scope, what sort of Chinese products might we buy because they're cheap and reliable, and what's out of scope that we fear might fall into the hands of those who effectively are agents for the Chinese Communist Party. A complete muddle about this, and I would have thought that the government needs a pretty clear list of here are a range of sectors or industries or projects which we will either ensure are commissioned only domestically or to allied nations. Perhaps we'd be okay with the Norwegians or the Americans or the Dutch contributing to our energy supply, but not the Chinese, for example. But we've never drawn that line. And I still think we've got this hangover from way back in the 80s and 90s, the Deng Xiaoping era, that if only China sort of embraced capitalism and markets, which it has to some extent, sooner or later, probably sooner, it will become a free country. Well, there's no sign of that happening. That prediction was completely wrong.
It was going to bring them in from the cold, wasn't it? And it really didn't. But is in particular interesting, Ed Miliband, he's touted his insane net zero policies. And by the way, Keir Starmer, last Tory government, and Keir Starmer, the Labour Prime Minister, are responsible for this. Ed Miliband does his master's bidding. So, lots of people calling for his head, but these are policies of all the major parties. But apart, I have to say, apart from Reform UK, and Kimmy Badenoch actually is now weighing back on it, but not on the actual idea of achieving net zero. But he's always said, we have to achieve net zero. We have to get more renewable fuels energy, so we don't rely on these sort of petrostate dictators who we rely on for oil. Now, of course, we get most of our oil actually and our gas from America, from allies in the like Qatar, but also crucially from Norway. We actually don't get our oil and our gas from these petrostate dictators. But he does want us to buy our solar panels and our wind turbines and rely on apparently steel and goodness knows what from China, which is a literal dictatorship.
No, that's right. I mean, I think the picture's even bleaker than the one you just paint, Julia. We're not bothering to access our own natural resources of oil and shale gas and the like. So
we import 60% of our gas. It's terrifying.
It's absolutely ludicrous. And coal, for God's sake. Ed Miliband was, suggesting, we've moved on now. We're closing down the last coal mines. So I think we've had to ship in a whole ton of coal from Japan to get this furnace up and running again. I mean, this is absurd, even if you are a carbon net zero addict and believe that's the way to go. I certainly don't. But even if you are,
make sense.
Why on earth do you think Japanese coal is green, but British coal isn't?
I must correct myself. We import 60% of steel. That's it. And steel, not gas, but we import a huge amount of our gas as well. Just want to correct myself. I know the net zero crew are big on facts, but we like to be big on them on this show. But this is the thing. It is painful. There was an interesting conversation on Today programme this morning. I always say I flip around. I've got Mike Graham on. I've got a bit of this, got a bit of that on. I like to flip in between, mainly because I just get too frustrated with anything too much from the mainstream. But I was interesting. There was a conversation. I had hopes with Nick Robinson. They were talking about about the high energy costs that made steel production in this country such a problem. And they mentioned green tariffs. They got as far as that, but at no point did they manage to get to as with conversations with a shadow minister only yesterday, the elephant in the room, which is the reason why you can't make energy cost efficient and a profit in this country, can't make steel, is because of our high energy prices.
No, that's right. I mean, if we are going to have high energy prices, largely because of our green policies, I mean, there are other things as well. We've got terrible planning policies, for example. So energy in the UK is, 4 times the cost of the United States of America? I mean, good luck competing with the USA if you're in a high energy intensity industry.
Yeah. Or indeed most of Europe. Our costs are 50% more than Europe as well.
So we've got to try and get those costs down. Carbon net zero, in my view, is an exercise in economics suicide. The Chinese government will gladly assist us if we want to partake in economic suicide. So don't be surprised that they are doing so. We've got to get energy costs down. And the sorry tale of British Steel, if you've made steel manufacturing completely uneconomic, such that you can't turn any sort of profit on it, then businesses aren't going to be interested. And you can sort of see this applying to a whole range of sectors. I mean, at what point are we going to nationalise the pub industry, right? We're going to ban banter and bad jokes in pubs. We've already banned smoking in pubs. Have we banned...
they'll ban booze in pubs next.
Right, so at some point, pubs will not be able to run officially in the market. There'll be a call to nationalised pubs. If you make it impossible to run businesses, unfortunately, you get into this position where nationalisation is the only option because you've made the sector completely unviable in the open market. That's where we've got to on steel. So longer term, we've got to unravel all of that backdrop.
That links into my final question, actually, because this poll that's commissioned by the Sun, the Survation poll of red wall voters, those voters, as I said, who went from the Labour to Tory and now looking, it turns out, mostly back to looking at from Labour to Tory, and then back to Labour, now looking like they're going to reform UK, according to this poll. 2/3 of those voters believe that Britain, they say, is heading in the wrong direction and is broken. I want to know from you, we're asking our audience today, what do you think is wrong with Britain? Is it broken? And what would you do to fix it?
Yeah, Julia, nothing works in Britain, or at least that's the impression. I'm surprised that poll only shows 68% thinking Britain is broken. Who are the 32% who think everything's going fine?
I know. I'm always fascinated by those people. Tell us why. What wonderful bubble of joy and unicorns and rainbows are you living in?
Hard to imagine, isn't it? Here's what I think's gone wrong, though. We've allowed to develop in Britain over many years on a gentle low simmer a whole real shift in the way we govern this country. We've now got north of 400 different quangos who are effectively in control of policy on a day-to-day basis, much more than our elected politicians. We've now got a politicised judiciary. I think if you want to impact immigration policy in Britain, you're probably better to become a judge than an immigration minister. And we have therefore sort of chipped away at parliamentary democracy. So people keep voting for things such as, for example, radically reduced immigration, and they don't happen. People, I think, got a pretty clear idea of the sort of Britain they want, but their voices are not listened to. And Parliament after Parliament either is incapable of implementing the desires and demands of the British people, or is undermined when it attempts to do that. So my recipe would be, let's get back to good old-fashioned free debate and parliamentary democracy. Let's completely empower our politicians. I know politicians are not a particularly loved class of people, but at least you can get rid of them, unlike quango.
It's the reason why we campaign for Brexit, which is our next topic, actually. Exactly.
Exactly right. So we've got to get back to the way that we ran Britain about 25 years ago. That's not a guaranteed route to a land of milk and honey, but I think it is a guaranteed route out of this disaster of nothing basically working and us all feeling we're back in the 1970s.
Yeah, and feeling powerless about it. And that's my crucial thing. I never thought that, land of milk and honey after Brexit was delivered. But for me, it was like, again, we can punish the people who don't do what they were told to do. And that's exactly what people did at the last general election. They made it very, very clear. We're not happy. You're out. And this government, if you're not doing what you can talk a good game on smashing the gangs and sorting the NHS out and this. If you don't do what the voters have told you to do, you're going to be out too. And eventually, one hopes we'll get a government, I don't care of whatever hue, that actually does the things that the British people have asked them to do. But that is what democracy is about.
Yes, I think that's right. But I think what we've really seen, since 1997, is we've changed the management quite a few times, but not the system. And I wonder whether the penny's dropping that simply changing the management and the personnel within our broken governmental system, it's really not enough.
Do we need to
change the way government works?
Well, exactly. Do we need to do, Elon Musk style Doge, clear out of top management, top civil servants? I mean, they certainly ain't world class, and they're certainly not servants anymore.
Yeah, I think we should consider whether the top rank of civil servants, perhaps the top 2,000 or 3,000, permanent secretaries, director generals and directors should be political appointees and attached to the programme of the government of the day rather than pretend they're independent. And all of these quangos, I think they should either be abolished, privatised or brought wholly within ministerial control.
Yeah.
And until we get that done, it doesn't really matter whether it's Team Red or Team Blue who you elect, because the country will be run in large part by the quangocrats, not by the MPs we put into Parliament.
And again, I thought that was so exemplified by the Sentencing Council and their plan to basically have two-tier justice in terms of sentencing, unless people from a designated minority. And even the Justice Secretary didn't want it, the Shadow Justice Secretary didn't want it, but had no powers to overrule it. But they've agreed to delay it. They haven't actually got rid of it. It is extraordinary. Why on earth would an unelected group of people get to have a say over the sentencing guidance? Unelected judges, yes, to actually carry out individual sentencing of individual offenders, but it is quite bizarre that we've got ourselves into that. Climate Change Committee, you name it.
Yeah, and on the sentencing issue, what was the response of the Justice Secretary? She certainly gave the impression that at the time she didn't even realise this guidance had been issued.
Yep.
And then the response was, I'm absolutely appalled by this. What I'm going to do is to write a very stiff letter.
Yes.
You've got to have rather more powers in ministers of the Crown than that.
Yeah.
I think the Sentencing Council is just one example of many bodies that should be wholly abolished. Or if the Justice Secretary wants people to advise on how sentencing guidance should change, that's fine. They should be fully embedded in the Ministry of Justice,
and then accountable
report to the Secretary of State,
who is accountable to guess who? Us. Mark Littlewood, always good to talk to you, Director of Popular Conservatism. Thank you very much indeed for that. Benjamin Butterworth, you come from a very different political side of the debate from Mark Littlewood. You're from the left, you're a Remainer, but shouldn't this be something we should all agree on? Again, freedom of speech, accountable government, elected officials making decisions and them being actually enacted by the people who are supposedly apolitical civil servants. Crucial word, servants. And they should be doing that. And we are not seeing that anymore.
Well, even Keir Starmer has said this. Since he came to power,
telling, isn't it?
He's made
Can't get anything done.
Exactly, precisely. And he's now sort of, sacking 120,000 of them, and presumably
They won't. I can tell you right now they won't.
You think?
No.
Well, I think he also hopes that will send
whatever
a message.
the number is, they're not going to do it. I'll tell you that right now.
But I don't think politically appointed civil servants is a good idea, because actually what does that mean in reality? Well, it probably means essentially more politicians.
Special advisors. But
right, but I'm not sure the idea
if civil
of people
servants won't do the job they've been asked to do, which is to be servants of the elected representatives, then they need to go.
And I think that's one thing. But
You'll do as you're sodding well told should be the answer they're told.
The idea that more people that attach themselves to a particular politician who ends up with a top job then being in charge of a massive, department, I don't think is a great idea.
Because they wouldn't be as good as the people in charge right now who've got their Oxbridge degrees and all went to the right schools and are utterly useless.
Hang on, if they were politically appointees, that would be far more the case that they'd be from a narrow
I
group.
don't care what anyone, but I just want people to do the job. I refuse to accept that people can vote for Brexit, they can vote for whether a Tory government or a Labour government. I expect the civil servants to do what the Labour Prime Minister says. I hold no candle for Keir Starmer, but he's a democratically elected leader of this country, and if he wants something to happen that was within the law and his Parliament has voted for it with his majority elected by us, they should sodding well do it. And if they don't want to do it, they should quit.
Well, I think that's fair enough. And actually, one of the problems they have in the civil service is that it's very hard to sack somebody.
Yep.
So in most of our jobs, if you get something wrong, if you underperform, if you don't deliver, you might be out. You're still here, but
somehow
other people are out. And civil servants don't have that. And not only that, but the person that says the awkward question, the difficult reality, you hear former civil servants speak of this, well, they're not the ones that get ahead because their boss isn't going to appreciate that.
You have to sign up to or everything as well. Fascinating. Again, I think that is a big part of what is broken about this country.